morning and afternoon. Today is Sunday, October 26th, and you are watching the Viewscreen. I'm your host, Amy Nelson.
And I'm your host, Kelvin Wood. The Viewscreen is your weekly Star Trek magazine show with the news, special features, our friends, and we're sending lots of love out there to our Star Trek family all around the world.
Well, Kelvin, another week. I'm so excited. This is episode 4 out of 8, so we're at our halfway mark.
We are indeed. I'm a bit discombobulated today because we've had a time shift. Okay. So it's that time of the year where we're a little closer together, Amy. We're only 7 hours apart instead of 8. And my lighting rig is not with us today. So apologies if anyone's thinking I look like I've been assimilated. I'm a little bit grey. All will become clear in a moment when we introduce our guests as to where my lighting has gone. I should say it's his lighting. I borrow it. But yeah, it's great. I'm really looking forward to this week's show. How has your week been?
Oh my goodness. This weekend has just been so much fun with a lot of visitors. This is one of the reasons why I love living in Las Vegas. So Friday, our producer behind the scenes, lovely David, is in town helping his father. And so I got to see him Friday night. We had a lovely time at my favorite wine bar, of course. And David loves wine too. And he brought his sister. So wonderful reunion there. And then today after the show, Tim, who has been on the Viewscreen when we did our wine tastings, he is coming in and we're going to go see The Wizard of Oz at the Sphere.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So I'm really looking forward to that.
Brilliant. I believe they pump smells into the Sphere as well. It's a truly 4D experience. There's gusts of wind.
Yeah, like the tornado. I hear that's this. I'm like, okay, where's my hair going to be?
Well, make sure the house doesn't fall on you at the beginning. That's all
exactly.
I can say. Brilliant.
Well, how has your week been?
It's been really good. It's been quiet. I am in hibernation mode, as I've been calling it now, but mainly it's money-saving mode to afford Australia in the new year for Davy's wedding and replenishing some of the costs of Star Trek Las Vegas, which was quite expensive earlier in the year. But yeah, just, lots of hobbies, interest, not a huge amount of going out spending money. So all good.
Yeah, very good. Well, I just want to give a huge shout out to those who are watching us live. We've got some comments. Lovely Gar535 says, I've never been to a wine bar. What? You need to come with me. I know a bunch of them around the city. But I'd like to go to a wine bar and complain about everything. Yuck.
That tends to happen after the wines.
Yes. And good morning to you, West number 1. So lovely to see you.
Thank you, guys. So yeah, if you have joined us on live, make sure you say hi in the chat to get the discussion going as we've got our guests here. And yeah, make sure you go ahead and hit the like and subscribe button as well on YouTube to make sure you never miss an episode of the Viewscreen. But remember, if you do prefer consuming your podcast audio, then you can get us on wherever you get your normal podcasts, Apple Podcasts, StreamYard, etc., just as an audio podcast.
Yeah. Well, what are we in for today?
Okay, today is our special creative writing week. So coming up on today's show, Kristin's here with all of the news of the week. Hey, Kristin.
Hi.
David must have been attacked by a cat then, or we'll talk about that later. Thank you, David.
And finally, after much cajoling and inviting, we have James Draper making his grand debut.
And also there with James, we're sharing the Wi-Fi, so we can't have too many devices online at the moment. We have Anjum Malik as well to talk script writing.
We've never been to a wine bar either.
No.
Oh,
Never.
Don't build your heart. You're not on yet.
Never.
What a packed show. I just love it when we're like together in the same space. So it's always makes for a fun show.
I've never appreciated on the view screen before when you have guys coming over to your house to do the cooking segments. It's literally all going on under my roof today. So we have myself, James, Anjum, all in the same building. So apologies in advance if the Wi-Fi can't take it. Amy, you'll have to take over if I freeze. But we seem to be okay so far. So let's bring in Kristin with the news for the week. Hello, Kristin. How are you?
Oh, I'm great. Unlike you, Kelvin, this is the time of year where I come alive. So I've had a very, very busy weekend full of absolutely amazing events that have just filled my cup. Not my coffee cup, my wine cup.
All Halloween spooky season type event, generically.
We have a cute little place in Kelowna called Bernie Supper Club, and it is a movie theater where you like silently order, you turn the lamp on your table, and people come and take your order, and then they bring you food, and they have the most amazing vegetarian bolognese made with like walnuts and stuff, and then lots of wine, of course. So on Friday, Justin and I went there and saw the Nosferatu movie. And it was really interesting and completely different watching it, knowing like, hey, we're just there in the summer in the Carpathians. So it was an absolutely amazing experience. And then last night there was one of Justin's students is in a band that has been signed to a record label. How exciting. It's so exciting. And they had a documentary release last night at the same place. So we were there 2 nights in a row. And then we went and saw this quartet, the string quartet in our town, and they did all like spooky themes, and so Nightmare Before Christmas and Halloween and Jason and all of that on their quartet, and everything was just illuminated by candles. There were no lights. So it was just gorgeous, just beautiful, beautiful, beautiful stuff. So nothing, unfortunately, Star Trek related, but it's definitely my other main love in life, which is being
on behalf of me and the viewers, I really appreciate you two both burning the candle at both ends and both getting up at the middle of the morning and looking splendid. It's 4 p.m. here now, and I've done nothing all day but just wait for this to happen. So I'm so boring.
No, you know what? I think that society does not allow people to just rest anymore, because if you just take time to rest and let your body do what it needs to do, suddenly you're called lazy. No. Have your rest days and never feel ashamed of them. They are so necessary, and especially with all the work you do keeping people safe in the UK from disgusting food. You deserve that replenish. And I know what it's like to be a civil servant. It's not easy.
And plus, we know when you are busy, how busy you really are, and partying and having fun. So,
I will never be able to keep up with you, Kelvin.
I am a burr in the gay tribe sense, and in the literal sense of I hibernate over winter after having a very heavy summer. So
yes,
no rest shaming on this show.
No.
Brilliant. Well, what is going on in the world of Star Trek this week, Kristin?
Again, it's a bit of a slower week.
Is this ours?
Oh. Yep, wrong slides.
Wait.
Hi. Sorry.
Hi. I did not. Is that yours? No, I don't have them. No. You guys, this is the first.
They were the random slides that you just displayed in James's.
Right.
Okay. Kristin,
well,
you are
hi.
The news
can we come back to Kristin? Can we? I apologize. This is so on me.
And then
I'm going to
everybody
get your
just
slides up.
froze.
Do you want to banter for like 2 seconds? And I'm going to
Brilliant.
get them.
Can we
We-
banter? Oh,
We can
Yes.
banter. We can banter.
because actually, James, if we could just, or sorry, Kelvin. Oh, well, actually, I also wanted to ask James about this too. Have you watched the new, or are you watching the new season of Drag Race UK?
Absolutely, yes, and we're bang up to date as well, so we can talk about that as much as you like. What do you think?
Oh, the talents. I think I'm one episode behind.
Okay.
But for me, I think the acting has been very good, because you know how sometimes there's some queens I'm like, oh, you should just not even do this as like a joke. I didn't get bad acting from any of them yet. So I've actually rather enjoyed this season so far.
I think the two queens who were in the top 2 for the acting week, you could tell they had quite theatrical almost backgrounds. You could tell they would have delivered plays and shows before. So I agree, it was very good. It was very good. I think
it's a really strong crowd. I can't place who I think is going to win. You know how usually you're like, oh, this is a no-brainer, right? Lawrence Chaney was always going to win. And then Drag Race Canada has just announced their next lineup, and one of the queens actually does Drag King as well. So
Brilliant.
I'm really excited. And here's a puppy thing, keeping with David's kitten.
Yeah,
Got all the little baby animals.
We should just say for the viewers, so producer David behind the scenes, just before we went live, David introduced us to a tiny little kitten that he has rescued, which he has claimed and given a great home to. And Kristin nearly melted in
I
her.
almost died. I love cats so much, and yet I have never been visited by the cat distribution system. I've always had to go out and source my own. Where is the cat? I want the pregnant cat showing up on my doorstep. What is happening? I'm almost offended with the universe.
Right.
You can have Amanda Rogers instead.
Yes. Okay.
So thank you, everyone, for your patience. We now have slides so that Kristin can do her news segment.
Amazing. So kind of like last week, the actual Star Trek news is a little bit bare, but we've got some celebrations today. So happy 33rd birthday to True Q, season 6, episode 6. I've always loved my Q episodes, and I totally got that she wanted to whisk Riker away to a private little gazebo, because you know what, girl, same. I always found this was a really interesting episode. I can't imagine what this young woman had to go through in terms of deciding what to do with her life and her powers and everything. I always thought it was a really interesting look at finding one's authentic self. I'm probably reading much too into it, but I always enjoy True Q. So I'm not sure about you two. What did you think? I know that some people are not into the Q episodes.
Well, Amy, you're doing a deep dive on them at the moment, aren't you?
We are. So over on our podcast Union Federation, which we also go live. So you in the audience, if you show up Monday nights at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 Eastern, we will be discussing Q episodes. And I believe we're going to get to True Q. We're at Cupid right now, so we're coming up.
Brilliant. One of the things I love about this episode, it's a Beverly Crusher observation. I think the relationship Crusher has with Amanda Rogers is so maternal, and the writing of this episode gives Beverly more opportunity to show herself as a mother than any of the relationships she's had with Wesley. So it's great for Gates McFadden, it's great for Beverly, and I love. And another observation about this episode, quickly, do you remember I've just completed my Stardate watch order?
Yes.
Overlapping of DS9 and TNG. The star date of this episode is almost to a digit exactly the same as Qless, the Deep Space Nine season 1 episode, meaning Q was in 2 places at once, which is perfectly doable for Q.
Oh my gosh.
He's omnipresent.
Indeed.
Yeah. That is an amazing little piece of little tidbit of information that I don't think we would ever. Yeah, facts. Like there is a specific level of dedication that one needs to know that type of detail. So, Kelvin, I always appreciate your little, yeah, you gotta know everything. I love it. I love it. So, happy birthday to True Q. Next is my meme of the week. I did pass this by other people before I posted it. So when he sends you a dick pic and you show it to your gay bestie to make sure it ain't photoshopped, I will confirm the rod's authenticity.
Brilliant. Brilliant. And I appreciate the checking. Is this content suitable for the view screen? Absolutely.
Because I showed it to Justin and Justin's like, oh, you can't put that on the air. I was like, oh, I don't plan to, but it's hilarious. So that's why I sent it. And when you were like, get it on the slides, I'm like, say less. I thought it was just, I never would have thought of this, but also for the straight men watching, if you do send unsolicited D pics to a girl, just know an army of gay men are going to see your penis.
Yeah.
It's
just saying, it's facts.
It's what's going to happen. So if you think that it's a little private thing and that you're, again, facts, yes. Thank you, Christos. If you think that it's some sort of like way that you're going to have, that you're having dominance over her, it better be something to write home about. Otherwise, we're all going to be laughing. So you have been warned. But, and of course, this is Garrick confirming the rod's authenticity. So no one would know better. So there's my meme of the week. Now, today, we have two big birthdays to celebrate. One, Seth MacFarlane, born today, 1973. And of course, we know him as Ensign Rivers on Enterprise, but also he is the genius behind the Orville.
Yeah, I didn't know he was that old. He looks good for his age.
He does. He's
my age. We're born the same year.
Oh, there we go.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Vintage year.
And I love this photo of him because no, that's not Seth's son on the right. That is a picture of Seth's very first independent movie he made. That was Star Trek. Unfortunately, I shouldn't have cut it out. He's got a little insignia on the left. So he's wearing an original series uniform here. And he used to make little mini Star Trek movies all the time when he was younger. So he's been a fan his whole life. And he said it was a dream of his to be on Star Trek. So when he landed this part on Enterprise, it was everything to him. And the Orville is very much, he said, it's his love letter to Star Trek. And you can tell.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I love the Orville so much. And every season just got better and better. Yeah. And one was great. Like, it did take me a little while to get his humor down and then for him to understand what the humor should be for the show. Yeah. But by episode 4, it was just fabulous. And I loved it so much so that, I podcast about it when it was on Union Federation. So the combination of Star Trek and the Orville. Absolutely just feel that the show really does develop Star Trek and you feel the love and the philosophy coming through. Yeah. If you guys have not seen it, highly recommend the 4 seasons that they have.
Yeah. And I keep hearing rumblings that season 5 is coming or there is a new season coming.
Yeah.
And, the only thing is since the last season is we have lost Norm Macdonald.
Yeah.
So, not having him there for his voice, that would be a little hard. So I don't know if they decide to do it. If not, what they have offered is phenomenal and very next generation.
Yes,
vibes,
absolutely. Yeah.
Right. Just that hopeful camaraderie and using, the idea of logic and justice to work through problems as opposed to just blowing people up. So
Right.
there
So
are 3 seasons. Yeah.
yes, Wes in the chat corrected me. So thank you, Wes. There are 3 seasons. 4 is in the pipeline, just not announced yet. Wes, we're going to need some facts for that. I did not hear that. I've heard that it started, but nothing in a pipeline. So that's sort of exciting.
I've seen rumblings of it online. So,
Same.
but again, I mean, we see rumblings of lots of stuff online, but
Right.
I saw something just recently that was a bit more concrete. I'm going to go and try to find that as well. But yeah, so Seth MacFarlane's birthday today. Happy birthday, love. You're amazing. We love you. I've been watching you since Family Guy first aired. So he's been a part of my development. When I used to do TAing at university, I would start my lectures sometimes with either South Park or Family Guy to demonstrate my sociological theory that I was talking about for the day. So he's he's a big part of my life. We want Moreville. Yes, Retro Doc.
There you go. There's your campaign.
Yes.
I love it. And then another birthday we have today is Anthony Rapp.
Oh.
Born today, 1971. And of course, he's Paul Stamets on Discovery. So our beautiful, beautiful guy has a birthday today as well. So day for welcoming our Star Trek families into the next rotation around the sun.
Mm-hmm.
Brilliant.
Yes. And then we've got some cool things that we have Star Trek people are doing outside of Star Trek. One of my favorite people to talk about is Chris Pine. Hello.
Hello.
He is making a debut in a London theater this coming summer. Previews will begin on July 4th, 2026. And he will be starring as Nikolai in a version of Anton Chekhov's Ivanov. Excuse me if I butchered that. So he is taken to the stage. And so the gentleman who has adapted the version that Chris is in said, after admiring Chris from afar for a long time, it was a delight to discover that not only is he a thespian from way back, but he's uniquely sensitive and brilliantly intelligent too. I've seen his work, how hilarious he can be, but also how moving. You can't do Chekhov without both. Wow. So little jealous, Kelvin, you are a hop, skip, and a jump away from getting to see Chris Pine on the stage if you want to this summer.
I wonder if Tom will go check it out.
That's what I thought too.
He might review it.
Yeah. So I thought that this was absolutely amazing to see, very much following in the footsteps of, Sir Patrick Stewart and a lot of our other favorite people who go to the live stage. They say there's something very different about things being live and rolling with punches and whatnot, as opposed to take after take after take, and you see a very edited version, right? So a lot of people love the rush that being live gets you.
Yeah. And Chris Pine gets to have a little bit of Chekhov back in his life after tragically losing Anton.
Yes. So,
nice.
Yeah. So one other piece that we have someone else doing is, of course, Boston Blue with Sonequa Martin Green. Apparently has been an instant hit.
Good for her.
Yeah. So she said, I just couldn't have expected it. I didn't think Star Trek Discovery would come after The Walking Dead, and I certainly didn't think another beloved TV franchise would come after Star Trek Discovery. So I've learned a lot about doing that, about building new iterations of beloved franchises. And it's very, very true. Her being written off of Walking Dead was, of course, you're not going to leave happily from a show like The Walking Dead. But she had a happy ending at the end of Discovery. And I'm so happy that somebody has seen her talent, has seen how enigmatic she is on screen, and has brought her into a new franchise. She's with my favorite Wahlberg brother, Donnie, and Ernie Hudson from Ghostbusters. Ernie is what? Is he in his late 70s or early 80s? And man, he is looking good. I mean, this is a testament to what taking care of your body will get you. And it's looking like you're 50 when you're in your 80s or whatnot. So if someone can fact check how old Ernie Hudson is, that would be great. But yeah, right now, Boston Blue is currently sitting at number 6 on Paramount.
Wow.
And apparently the 3 of them have just absolutely killed it. And so if you're wanting some new Sonequa Martin Green fill, check out Boston Blue.
I forgot that had premiered. So I want to check it out. Now, she was, number 1 on the call sheet. Like, she was the leading lady for Discovery. Is she a leading, like, I know Boston Blue, like, Donnie's sort of the lead. Do you know where she's on the call sheet?
So from my understanding, Boston Blue is a spinoff of Blue Bloods.
Yeah.
Tom Selleck, and Donnie was a big part of that. And I think
Right.
I've never watched that, but I guess when Blue Bloods ended, he got his spinoff. So Donnie is the lead, but she's his partner.
Okay.
She's the leading lady.
Okay.
Of the
and
show.
Sonequa is doing all the chat shows, doing all the promo, and it's been so strange to see her on screen so much and not talking about Discovery. But she does in the written form of many interviews, like you've just said, Kristin, she will mention coming off the back of Discovery. So it's nice to know that Star Trek is still present with her. But it's both a joy, but also a shame to see your beloved actors moving on to
Yes.
Yeah.
It was hard when Chris Pine moved on. I'm not gonna lie.
Well, I mean, they jerked him around for how long about that?
I know.
And I was just like, no.
Yeah. I mean, I'm glad they got work.
He's 79. Thank you, Wes. So 79 years old. And the only reason I remember is because somebody posted a photo of him on a red carpet, probably for Boston Blue, and he was in a t-shirt. And boy has guns on guns. And I remember one of the comments on Reddit was, can you believe this man is almost 80? And I was like, no, I'm sorry, sir. You read a digit wrong. They didn't read a digit wrong. No, he's just in phenomenal shape and still super active. And but for Sonequa, I love that in the last 10 years, she has been on 3 huge franchises now, moving from what the hit that The Walking Dead was, and she got out before it, went downhill real fast. Then she did Star Trek, which, had been around for how many years before Discovery started. And now she's picking up with this one. So she is killing it. She is absolutely, not missing a beat between gigs. And I'm really happy for her. So yeah, go check out Boston Blue. And I was going to watch it. And then all of a sudden I saw that The Nanny started streaming on a platform, and I was like, oh, never mind. Sorry.
Well, I need to remember. So I'm glad that you brought this up in the news, because I absolutely loved Blue Bloods. I watched every 20 gazillion seasons that there are. So I'm really looking forward to this.
Gotta love me some Tom Selleck, right?
I know. Sucker
for him. Yeah. And I think that's it.
Brilliant.
For me today. The one other thing that I didn't want to make a slide for, just because the discussions are continuing about the new Voyager game, and the developers have come out saying that in the final version, the audio will be better.
They've listened.
That is a good thing to know. So yes, we can expect better. Then maybe that means they have the voice actors recorded, ready to come into the final cut, not the promo or the tester.
Yeah.
Well, shall we bring James and Anjum on and see if they've got anything to say about the news there? Okay.
Oh,
you're on mute.
You're on mute.
I have to start by saying it's so bright in here with Kelvin's light, and Amy's insisting on putting that light on at the back. We're loving it.
Club Tropicana in here.
Wow.
Come back to Sitges, Anjum, for a moment.
Throwing me under the bus,
Yeah, we loved the news, didn't we?
We did. There's something for everyone, from unsolicited indecent pictures to the plays of Anton Chekhov. It's a mixed bag.
It's a spectrum.
Yes.
Yeah, it rattled through. One thing as you were talking, I kept running across the room to get different objects to remind me about different things that you said. The Q stuff, I think about Q episodes is I really like the ones a bit like the Loaxana Troy ones, where it's more of a serious plot line, and Q is used in that way. I find some of the silly ones a little bit too wacky and too far out. And then that reminded me about this book. I don't think we ever see them together in the series, but this is because I'm going to be talking about Peter David, the author, a bit later on. In one of his books, he brings them together, Loaxana and Q, and that's a very entertaining.
What book is that, James? For those who are just listening.
Oh yes, thank you. It's called Q in Law by Peter David, and it's Next Generation novel number 18. It's a very, very good one. It's one that I got at Star Trek Las Vegas. I got the cassette audio performance for, which is performed by Majel Barrett and John Delancey. So if I had a cassette player, I'd be able to listen to that. But
very good. Retro doc in the comments.
Go on, love.
I'm just going to say Retro Doc says that is a great book, as are all of Peter David's.
Absolutely, they are indeed. I thought it was our show today, Amy. We'll take charge in this section.
I'm really having to, jostle here for when I'm able to speak. I would like to say, speaking of Beta Canon in the books, it has been on various different Star Trek podcasts and dotting around social media this week. A little more news about the potential Star Trek United series with Jonathan Archer, Scott Bakula. They've given a lot of plot points away. So Mike Sussman, who is will be hopefully the exec producer, was talking about Jonathan Archer's children and what role they would play in the series. And let's slip that his eldest child would be the offspring of him and Captain Hernandez from the Columbia. So I'm interested to see if there's any retcon of the novel series, because Captain Hernandez and the fate of the Columbia have quite a big part in those. So interesting to see what would happen there. So
more importantly, the missing beagle. Where's the missing beagle? We need that back.
Well, it's in the transporter buffer somewhere in an alternate dimension. Brilliant. Okay, well, thank you so much, Kristin, for the news this week.
My pleasure.
We will see you all a little later in the show.
Yeah. Well,
okay. What's next, Amy?
Okay, so we are going to introduce James Draper coming back.
James is just picking Anjum out of the room so he can get the spotlight on camera. So,
well, I think he needs to also dim the light because, I understand there are lighting issues, but we do see that beautiful wall of books behind you. I just want to say James is senior lecturer in creative writing at Manchester Metropolitan University. And I have had the pleasure to meet some of his coworkers who all adore him. It's an absolute pleasure, James, to have you on the Viewscreen finally.
Am I on?
You're on.
Oh, well, thanks very much for having me. It's only taken 4 series. And as I said in a post online, you get to your 4th series and you've got to get Worf and 7 of 9 to come and help give a boost to your ratings. But it's lovely to be here. Lovely to be here. Normally, I have to sit downstairs very quietly on a Sunday watching Double Columbo in silence. But today I can join in and speak. So thanks for having me.
Yes.
Yeah. We only had to take you to Las Vegas and get you blind drunk for you to agree to it.
You did.
With witnesses. Otherwise, I think you would have backed out. Well, James, what are we talking about? Beta Canon.
We're going to talk about Beta Canon and specifically in relation to the New Frontier series of novels created and written by, or co-created and written by, Peter David. So I'm going to talk a little bit about that. Talk a bit about the origins of and the content and the kind of character of that series, and then a little bit more broadly about its impact and some of the kind of opportunities and challenges that writing in Beta Canon can provide to authors.
Excellent.
Yeah.
All right.
So, are we bringing some
slides on? So right, shall I just go?
Yes, this is
right,
your
wow.
show, James.
Thank you very much. This is the most words I've ever got in while I've been in the company of these two individuals. So thanks very much. Yeah, so as I say, I'm going to talk about Star Trek New Frontier. I've called this a little bit of an informal presentation, Writing Boldly into Beta Canon. So the New Frontier series, it was created back in 1997, and it was co-created by the author Peter David and also Pocket Books editor John Ordover. And they created it really at that time as a sort of experiment to see how audiences would respond to some stories which were written outside of what we might call our alpha canon, if you like, the world of the television series. As up to that moment in time, almost all of the novels had been set within the world of original series, Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, and so on, and starring the main casts and sitting very much within the world of those existing television programs. So it was one of the first, or really the first within the Star Trek world that went outside of that and set up its own universe, its own primary cast, its own characters. And I think it's very interesting to look at the moment in time that this happened, which was right in the middle of one of Star Trek's golden eras, that sort of era of the Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager moment in time in the 90s. Was when it happened, when they started to do that. And I think people largely agree from lots of the articles and the reviews that I've read, and also the statistics that we look at from that series, that it was a success. It contains some of the best-selling and some of the most loved Star Trek books which are out there. And potentially we could say it led to several future series that were book only, that were set totally within the world of the Beta Canon, as we might call it. And from 97 to 2015, I think I've counted all of these uprightly on the shelves behind me, which Amy made me leave the big light on so you could see. That overall, there have been 25 novels, 3 short stories, or slightly longer stories, novellas as we call them, 2 comic stories. One was a one-off standalone issue, one was a mini-series, I think five issues within that. And there was also a collection of 18 New Frontier stories, all set within the New Frontier universe, which we'll look at a little bit later on. So we can move on to the next slide. I don't know if I can. There we go. So just to say about
a question, James.
A question, yes.
When I raise my hand, I have a question.
Okay.
She's going to have to go to the bathroom.
Okay.
So, going back and what you were saying about Alpha and Beta Canon, like on the flip side, like these are new characters. Do any of these characters show up in what you would call the Alpha Canon books?
Yeah, to some extent, mainly, certainly in my experience of reading through them, and in what we would call the crossover series for the novels. So when, again, particularly within that period of time, the late 90s, going into the early noughties, we would often annually have a crossover series with the Star Trek novels. It was a period where there were lots of novels being published, 2 or 3 a month. Each year, and normally in the middle of that year, in the summertime, ordinarily we would get a crossover series where there was a single storyline which would connect or move across all of the different series. So originally these were original series, Next Generation, Voyager, Deep Space Nine, but we did start to see the New Frontier series coming into that and playing a part in that. And there's some really memorable moments in those crossovers where you would see the captains and first officers or other characters getting together to collaborate on the big issue or the big problem at hand, whatever they were trying to solve in the universe. And our New Frontier cast would play a part in that. So yes, we would start to see them appear over in that way. I think it's truer that it's more the other way around, that we would see in New Frontier appearances from characters from the Alpha Canon, if you like, more than the New Frontier people going across. But there were those touch points, particularly in those crossovers, where we would see them appear in stories in the other universes or the other worlds, the other series, and we would see them collaborate and connect up over there.
Great, thank you.
There you go. That was a very good question, Amy.
Thank you.
Yeah. So we go back onto the next one. So just to say a little bit then about the kind of origins and the influences of this series, as with a lot of the Star Trek series and the books, it has this famous statement in the beginning, the opening of most of the books in the collection, based on Star Trek: The Next Generation, created by Gene Roddenberry. And as we saw in the previous slide, which was the cover from House of Cards, the first book in the New Frontier series, we've got Picard and Spock featured on the cover either side of our New Frontier captain, Mackenzie Calhoun. So very much situating this as part of that universe and using these big players, the big dogs from our main Alpha series, Picard and Spock, stick them on the cover of any novel and it's likely to sell. So you can see there's a sort of marketing thing going on there, but also I think a really interesting storytelling thing that we're trying to situate this. Yes, it's new, but it's very much within this world that you will be familiar with. So you're going to be excited by new stuff, but also you're going to feel very much at home, and we'll have characters here to hand over and pass across. We've also got some other characters you might recognize, primarily from the Next Generation television series. We have Dr. Salar, who appears early-ish in, I think, season 2 of the Next Generation, is our medical officer, one of the main players in New Frontier. Robin Leffler, again, who makes a couple of cameo appearances in Next Generation, mainly paired up with Wesley, comes across as the operations officer of the ship. And our first officer, one of our main characters, is Commander Shelby, given the first name Elizabeth for the first time here. We heard that later on in Picard when she comes back there on screen. But she's a main player throughout this, beginning as commander, being promoted to captain, and ultimately admiral through the series. And we need every Star Trek show needs its Badmiral, and we have Jellicoe coming across, having been promoted since Chain of Command. He is our sort of slightly grumpy uncle that's in charge back at Starfleet Command in the story. So you can see we've got all of those people connecting us to the world. But again, all these characters kind of picked up and moved on very much from where they were in those appearances on the screen. A really interesting book to think about in relation to this is a 1990, so 7 years before we got New Frontier, Next Generation book, number 10 in the series, so pretty early on, called A Rock and a Hard Place. And it's mainly a kind of Riker and Troy story, but Riker's taken away from the Enterprise, and we have a stand-in commander, Quentin Stone, who is, and this is a novel written by Peter David, the co-creator of New Frontier. Quentin Stone is very much a Mackenzie Calhoun archetype. It's a very similar character, disobedient, unconventional, brushing up against authority, getting into arguments with people, very much a kind of physical fighter, but brilliant, and with a knack for succeeding and for saving the day, often through instinct and luck rather than through logic and through following the authority of Starfleet. So that's a really interesting novel to look at in connection with this. Not the same character, but absolutely lots and lots of connections and ties between those two, both in terms of the characterization itself, but also the impact and the relationships with authority and other characters around them. And then we have the Starfleet Academy book series, which is really a kind of the early stories of Worf at school. And that features some of the characters that again come across to New Frontier. So they're existing in Beta Canon at that moment in time, but they are brought across as adults, as officers who graduated from the Academy into the New Frontier series. So again, you can see we're drawing on connections and bringing people across there. Very interesting as well to think about this Starfleet Academy series in relation to what we'll get with the new Academy TV show that's coming up, to see are there any connections, any overlap between what's going on there. But it's basically Worf's school days, and some of his school friends are brought across to New Frontier as our security officer, Kebron, our navigator and pilot, Mark McHenry, and Salita. Salita, I think, is one of my favorite characters in New Frontier, half Romulan, half Vulcan science officer, who's hiding her past from her colleagues and goes through lots of transitions as we go through. Okay, so we jump on to the next slide, next pictures. A bit later on, this is where we get much more interesting. I think once New Frontier builds its confidence up a bit, it really starts to play about with references and connections from what we've seen before. So we have two characters brought across from the animated series, each through separate temporal mishaps. We have Mares and Arex come over to New Frontier and join the crew. We have a really interesting character in Ensign Janos, the security officer, who is originally presented as a Mugato. He's the big white furry monsters from the original series. But later on, he's retconned as a sort of science experiment gone wrong. Not for in-universe reasons, but because there were copyright issues around using the Mugato as a character within the series, is my understanding of what went on there. Really interesting character. He's a bit like Beast from the X-Men. He's an enormous brute, but he's very eloquent and very sort of softly spoken when you get to see him up close. And one of the most interesting characters that we encounter is Robin Leffler's mother, who is presumed missing, presumed having been killed in a shuttle accident, I think it is. And they discover her quite early on in the series. I think this is book 4 or 5. Morgan Primus, the Robin's mother, and on the screen you can see a picture of Morgan Primus there, who might remind you of a character we may have seen before. It turns out Morgan is immortal and has a lot of physical and personality similarities to the original portrayal of Number One from the original series pilot, The Cage. And there's a lot of highly entertaining play around with that in the novels. Before we see, there's an image on the screen for those who are listening from one of the comic books, Turnaround, where she's pictured looking very much like Number One from The Cage. But in the novels, there's an enormous amount of play. There's a scene where in one of the crossover ones that I was talking about before, the Next Generation crew were aboard the Excalibur. And Picard and Riker kind of spot Morgan coming down the corridor, and for a minute are like, does she remind you of someone? Does she look like someone? So playing about there with the idea of Morgan actually being Luoxana Troy, being the actress playing the same character. So a lot of, once it gets into, and the way Peter David is able to get away with doing that, I think you have to be a very, very, very talented writer. Because you can tip that a little bit too far into farce. Every time he does these kinds of things, it's perfectly pitched. So some great fun done about there. And just to note, just to sum what our premise is, if you're not sure what's going on in this novel series, we're in Thelonian space, a sector of space where the government and empire has collapsed, and the USS Excalibur has been sent in to help support, to try and restore order. And it turns, and Calhoun, of course, our captain, is from one of the planets that was kind of subjugated within this empire. So there's political intrigue as well as in the backdrop there. Okay.
Well, I would just like to add, when you said how expertly Peter David writes the connection between Luoxana and Number One, and now this character, like, he did the same thing in his Q, where it's like Q, Trelane, and it was, I think, wasn't that sort of the first connection between those entities?
I think it was, yeah. Q
came from him, and it was so well likened, and I was like, why did I not think of this before? It was very well done, so I could see him doing that with this character as well.
Yeah.
And James, are there any connections or hints of what we're seeing with Number One being an Illyrian in Strange New Worlds, and these gifts or powers that are, with Una, that could potentially lead into something from New Frontier?
You could make a case for that, but I think that'd be stretching it slightly. The Illyrian stuff, I think, came a little bit later on in Uma McCormack's novels, which were for the 50th anniversary. The series of novels which were really, it was a sort of Kirk and Spock era story, but with Number One coming back as a captain to join in. I think it was called Legacy, that series. And I think that does a lot more direct work with Number One. The stuff in New Frontier really never confirms that's what's going on. It's just an awful lot of insinuation and suggestion, I think, a little bit more than that. I mean, it may be a spoiler to reveal this, but by the end of the New Frontier series, she's actually become a hologram, which is part of the Excalibur ship, which is what's happening in the picture. That's why it's slightly dotted, deliberately so on the screen. So I think sort of, but really in New Frontier, it takes that character in a different direction.
Great.
Okay, next slide then. So I wanted to characterize it because the New Frontier really, I would say, is what got me into the Star Trek novels. And really getting into the Star Trek novels, I think, really helped to crystallize my involvement with and my affection for Star Trek more broadly. So what I wanted to try and do here is do a kind of characterize what the appeal of this series is, why it stands out so much. So I just had a little bit of a think through here. I think it's the excitement of a new series and a new crew. At the time, it was a franchise that was very much set into those different worlds emerging from the different television series, and to have something that was new was really exciting. And it took until books 5 and 6 that for those who could see on the video version on the screen, we have the covers of books 5 and 6, Martyr and Fire on High. And that has, for the first time, a picture, an actual illustration, a painting of our crew from New Frontier, which I remember getting these books at the time, back in 98, I think it was, and getting so excited that we could visually see these. Because up till then, we've had 4 books where we're just having the descriptions, we're having to paint a picture in our minds. Some of the characters, yes, well, that's exactly what I thought they would look like. Others, it was a bit like, oh, I didn't think they quite looked like that. And I always enjoy, and you can see, if you can see the slide, the books are slightly out of alignment to get the image lined up. I was always slightly frustrated; they never quite matched in the editions that I had, in terms of where the printing had been cut off. But the excitement of just seeing that new crew with some familiar faces in for the first time. I think a big part of the appeal of this series, and hopefully what I've said already has given you a sense of that, is the sense of play, the freedom to draw on canon and draw on elements, characters, plot points, the universe that we're so familiar with from the television series, but to subvert that and to play around with it a little bit. Feels sometimes, and this is a positive thing I say, like someone playing with their Star Trek toys in this book series, having great fun, kind of going their own way and doing things which are a little bit beyond the boundaries of what we might expect or be able to see on television. And for us as readers and as the audience of these things, that gives us a great sense of satisfaction, the sort of the freeness, the wildness of it. But also, and I think, again, Kelvin and Amy, in your questions there and your responses, you're getting a sense of this as well, the satisfaction in spotting all of the Easter eggs and references and connections that Peter David packs into all of these stories, and every page of these things almost is full of something where you're thinking, is he saying what I think he's saying there? Is that what I think he's talking about? It's like a really exciting puzzle to try and solve. And then the kind of, on the other side of that, the sense of risk, that there is genuine danger and peril. These are not characters from the television series. You know, if you're going to read a book that's got Riker and Troy on the front in the mid-90s, they're not going to die because they're part of the television series. But here we've got original characters who aren't tied up with the same restrictions. So that sense of freedom and play also brings with it a sense of risk. And as I'll talk about in a slide or two's time, when I wrap up on this and talk about the impact and the way the novel's moved on a little bit later on, that doesn't just apply to our beta characters. Some of our alpha characters, once the television franchise is finished, are also similarly in danger. And what I would say, from that picture you can see where we've got 9 crew members, how many of those do you think make it to the end, to make it to book number 25? And not everybody does. And it's not just the beta gang that are for the chop, I'm afraid, and I won't spoil it for anybody who has not read it. Okay, so there's that sense of risk, that sense of danger. I think tone and style as well. And we've characterized Peter David's way of writing, the way he goes about living and creating stories in the Star Trek world. And I think that there's a gritty, swashbuckling aspect to this, which again is different. It's new in the Star Trek world. We have sword fights, a flawed hero in Calhoun. He's got all kinds of difficult backgrounds, and he's kind of fallen out with Starfleet. He punched Jellicoe and got thrown out at one point, and he's brought back in at the beginning of the New Frontier series. And so from the beginning, this is not a hero being brought in to captain a flagship. This is someone being brought in very, very different circumstances. Lord Quan, who is, I like to think of him as the kind of evil Neelix of this series. He's the former ruler, one of the former members of the royal family of the Empire that's collapsed, sneaks aboard and ends up becoming a kind of very strange ambassador figure who's part of the crew, but also, can we quite trust him? Has he got ulterior motives? Something else going on in there. I think of it's a series with morally grey areas in ways that the series hadn't quite gone as far as that at the time. When it began, it was maybe around the time, similar time, maybe a little bit before, In the Pale Moonlight. But it makes some of what goes on in that episode where Sisko is wrestling with moral issues look a bit light-hearted with some of the kind of dark areas that we go into in this series. So tone and style, very appealing, something slightly different to what we've seen. And again, we touched on this, we're talking about the kind of Loaxana stuff, the comedy, enormous amounts of humor all the way through this, wit, subversion, people being put in surprising circumstances, wordplay, no limits on lines that they probably wouldn't let themselves get away with on the television. There's a hilarious scene in Double or Nothing, another one of the crossover novels. Calhoun goes off on a mission with Picard. And Salar, played by Denise Crosby, is our villain in that book. And there's about 3 chapters that all build up to her just saying "fire at will," and she means Will Riker. And you think it takes a writer of some nerve and some talent to get away with that. It's brilliantly done, and we get all the time. This series is full of that kind of thing. So that sense of appeal. That's some of the things I think why this series stands out for me as a favourite, why I was hooked from the first edition. So we move on then. We've only got a couple of slides left. Sex, sexuality and representation, I think, is a really important and really interesting topic that again, this is why this series stood out when it first was published in 1997. And a lot of this focuses around one of the characters, Burgoyne, who is our chief engineer, originally in the series, later becomes first officer once Shelby's promoted away. Burgoyne is a member of the Hermat species. They're a dual-gendered species, so they have both male and female characteristics. So they're also, I think this is again from a. Oh no, I'm going to come back to that second point in that top one at the end. But yeah, so dual-gendered species. Pronouns are talked about explicitly from Burgoyne's first appearance, which I think is in the second novel in the series. We have these pronouns here and she, rather than he or she or whatever. And initially shish. And again, there's a conversation about shish being phased out by the Hermat culture because they want to simplify or refine or evolve their things. So in 1997, we have in the Star Trek universe explicit discussion about non-binary pronouns and about how to discuss and talk about and refer to and include Burgoyne and the rest of the Hermat species. We also, I think this is really important in terms of representation, we see Burgoyne having relationships, romantic and physical relationships with both male and female crew members. Ultimately, Burgoyne becomes the father, which is deliberately in inverted commas, of Dr. Salar's son. It becomes one of the main characters later on in the series. And we have open conversations in the book about Burgoyne's sex life, having discussions, talking explicitly and outright and head on in a Star Trek book in 1997 about all of these different things. I vividly remember there's a conversation where one of the crew members is asking Mark McHenry, who is the male member of the crew that Burgoyne starts to have a relationship in parallel with the relationship with Salar. And asking what's it like to have a physical relationship with someone who has both male and female characteristics, physical characteristics. And there's a kind of adult conversation about this in a Star Trek book in the 90s. We would never have seen that on screen. So again, this is something that the Beta Canon gives us permission to do, because it's existing in a slightly different realm. This was sort of so striking in terms of LGBTQ plus representation, as we would call it now. It would have been fewer letters back in 1997, but it was covered in the Gay Times, I think it was, the press at the time, that this character was picked up. Look at what's in, you won't believe what's in Star Trek. Look, we're there, we're part of this story, we're part of this world. So the power of that representation was picked up. I've been searching for that article, I can't find it. I found a fantastic article in the brilliantly named magazine Transgender Tapestry, a 1997 edition of that, an article by Bijo Trimble, who was the letter campaigner that saved Star Trek, about transgender and different gender identities and representation in Star Trek, again from 1997. So looking for that article, I found some really interesting stuff that was focused on the Dax character on screen in Deep Space Nine. But I'd say that what was going on in New Frontier in parallel with that representation was extremely powerful, very ahead of its time, not what we would have got in the Alpha Canon, not where they would have gone maybe in the television series in quite the same way. So I think a really important character, a standout character, and again, something that drew people to this book series back in 1997. Weird, now, interestingly, the image of Burgoyne there is from the UK publication of Fire on High. The previous slide that we looked at, it's a different illustration. All the other characters are the same, but for some reason Burgoyne has a different face on the, I don't know, I think it's maybe the German publication. It looks a different photograph. But the idea was that the appearance of Burgoyne was based on David Bowie. And again, that's a nod towards gender performance maybe, and different representations of identity at the time. So Burgoyne, I think we can't underestimate the power of this character and the importance of this character in Beta Canon in Star Trek at that time. I think it's really fascinating to reflect on that. Sex and sexuality features much more widely than that in the New Frontier series. There are lots of romantic and physical relationships in particular represented and played out between the characters across this series. This, I think, I put on the slide there, it's interesting to consider this through a 1997 and a 2025 lens. Some of this now plays very differently to what it did when it first came out at the time. We have a lot of particularly female characters in states of undress, appearing in visions or appearing sort of half wrapped in sheets. Same with the male characters as well. With Calhoun, he's often having sexual and romantic encounters, and he's kind of pictured in different ways or described in different ways. And again, that was an interesting thing, that able to push that a little bit further on the page than maybe on the screen. And also not just heterosexual connections there. We also had really interesting representations of Lord Kwan and Leffler, Robin Leffler, get married. That's maybe a little bit of a spoiler. But later on in the series, Leffler ends up having a relationship with Lord Kwan's sister, who is at the time being possessed by Lord Kwan. So some really interesting sci-fi stuff going on, but also in terms of representations of different sexualities, different gender identities being put on the page at the time, stands out, I think. And again, really interesting to weigh those up through us looking at them now. Some of it's a little bit, maybe a little bit sort of slightly frivolous. Some of it really radical in terms of what it was doing back in 1997 within this universe. So if we move on, then I think we're coming to the end now. Just a little bit about the legacy and the impact. Of course, once we got past 2005 and Enterprise and the TV franchise wound up in terms of the Star Trek universe, the novels became the primary world for storytelling, particularly in that TNG era in which New Frontier sits. So there was freedom then for the writers to really, on all fronts, go beyond the rules, and a little bit of what had been happening in New Frontier, we could start to see echoes of that, and the impact of that maybe across some of the other stories, whether deliberately or whether incidentally, but we can certainly draw comparisons between what was going on there. And with our main characters from Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, Voyager, we saw births, deaths, marriages, characters moved around, major players from those series being killed off or being moved into different areas, particularly through the DS9 and Voyager relaunch series. And then we go into things like the Destiny trilogy, where everything was completely changed for good within that universe. So there was a kind of seismic shift really across the whole of Beta Canon, where everything was up for grabs. And we saw that come to an end in the Coda series, where after we revisited it on screen, that TNG era universe, going back particularly with Picard, also Lower Decks and Prodigy perhaps, we had to retcon a lot of the stuff that had happened in the novels. Births, deaths, marriages, things like that. And we saw that entire literary universe being wound up, and maybe we might say wiped out in the Coda series, that sort of cleared it all up so that we could get back on track. I've got very mixed feelings about this, because we are getting back on track now with the novels, but we're back to that slightly tentative era where, yes, great stories with people we recognize from the screen, characters we want to spend more time with, but we're kind of restricted in what we can do with them. We're a little bit trapped because we need them to be alive, or we need them to be where we left them. We need to press the reset button at the end of the story so we can take them back to where we were on screen. So as we're very lucky, we're in a new golden era of television Star Trek. But from my perspective, of someone who lives very much, as you can see from the shelves behind me, in the literary universe of Star Trek, maybe we're not so much entering into the new frontier anymore. Our frontiers have been drawn around us a little more firmly than they might have been in the past. And I think we've only got one more slide to go. And I just wanted to pay a bit of a tribute to Peter David, who we sadly lost a little earlier this year. My favorite Star Trek author by a mile, and not just for the New Frontier series, but for a lot of the other books that he wrote. Imzadi, of course, which I know will be one of Amy's favorites, based on who's slap bang in the middle of the cover there. Imaginative, even in that imaginative playing around with as much as you can in a universe that we've got is fantastic. And if you can see on the slides, we've got a couple of pictures. One is from the Captain's Table crossover series. We have Mackenzie Calhoun pictured at the front, and on those book covers we had illustrations of the authors in the background in the Captain's Table bar, and Peter David is there on the right hand side. And I often with students get them to look at author photos, and I teach an entire module in our second year of our undergraduate program about writers' identity and writers' profiles. The author's picture that Peter David used for a lot of the New Frontier novels is him kind of holding that sword up and pointing it towards the camera. I think that's such an interesting take, and I put it deliberately next to the cover of No Limits, where we've got our captain in a similar pose. This is someone who's kind of unafraid to face us head on and play about with our Star Trek universe, and he will be very much missed. One of my favorite authors, and I'm just very glad we've got that New Frontier legacy, that 25 stories that we can go back to and read time and time and time again, which I do every few years. I find myself dipping back in and often reading right from the beginning.
So are all the New Frontier books written by Peter David? Because during that time, there were authors like Ian Jan Friedman and David Mack. So is New Frontier specifically Peter David, or are there other writers contributing to this series?
Most of the stories are, almost all of them. The No Limits series, which is the one pictured, which I've got here, that's a book of, I think it's 18 short stories. And it's the first time that the story New Frontier was written by other writers. So it's kind of inviting. Peter David's got one of the stories in there. I think it's towards the end, if not the last one. But it invited lots of other writers to play around in that universe. There's a brilliant introduction by Peter David in this, where he talks about. Why has it gone off?
It's not. We're still going.
Oh, we're good.
Have you gone off? It went black. My screen went black. Where Peter David talks about that process of giving his characters up to the other writers, and how kind of terrifying it was, but what a specific experience, a useful experience as a writer. So most of it is, but I think it's so interesting when he does hand over to other people, we get that little bit of an insight into, oh, I'm a bit nervous about this, but actually off we go.
Brilliant. I have a question, Jez. I might be completely wrong in misremembering this, but was it true that one of the characters in New Frontier was a Brickar, which is the species that Roktok in Star Trek Prodigy is? So David introduced that species that was picked up then in Prodigy.
Yeah, that's Zach Kebron, who's our security officer, originally created in the Star Trek Academy, Starfleet Academy series, at school with Worf, brought over to New Frontier, and we go through a really interesting transition with Kebron, where as part of the Brickar puberty process, he kind of at one point sheds a lot of his outer shell and develops an entirely new personality, and after that becomes security officer and counselor to the ship. And again, the way in which this again is stuff where you think in the hands of a slightly less accomplished writer, this could be pretty wacky stuff, but it's brilliantly done and played for humor and for emotional depth, I think, at parts as well. But yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's Zach Kebron.
So RetroDoc in the comments says, I loved the first half dozen New Frontier books, especially the heavy continuity, but dropped out when the breaks between releases became more than a year. So I want to add on to that. You said there's how many books, and then what is the time period that they were actually written? You said they started in 97? How long did they go?
They went to 2015, but there are some big gaps. So part of that kind of late 90s, early noughties boom, I would say, in terms of Star Trek books, where there were 2 being published every month at least. We did get them regularly. So every year it was 2 editions, sometimes more than that. Then when that fizzled out a bit and the publishing record kind of moved away, and particularly as we got out of the end of Voyager and that TNG era television production, there were bigger gaps, and there are bigger gaps in the storytelling as well. There's a big jump at one point, and I think it's in After the Fall. We come back and everything is changed and everybody's in different places. But what I really like about that is from a storytelling perspective, it's not just more of the same. I really appreciated the fact that, oh, right, okay, everybody's somewhere else in quite distinct and quite different places. This again, it's kind of the boldness of Peter David's style and of writing in this area. You can kind of take those risks and push things on a little bit. So we see that some people aren't members of the crew anymore. They've gone off and moved to somewhere else. Shelby and Calhoun are kind of separated in different roles in different places, but connected through possibly a spoiler. They do get married at one point. I like that. I absolutely get what's being said there, because when I go back to reread, more often than not, I do read the first 6 and tend to do that as a chunk, because it's a really lovely continuity across those 6 stories, telling different stories, but kind of one big arc. And then after that, things change a little bit. But I appreciated that we're going somewhere else. We're doing something slightly different. We don't find everybody where we expect them to be, which again, you'd probably see it now in the newer Trek series, but you wouldn't have seen that in the Next Generation. You wouldn't have seen Riker go off to be admiral of a space station, or Troy and Worf being sacked for hiding their identities and having to go somewhere else and do those sorts of things. You wouldn't see certain characters being killed off very suddenly and very surprisingly, that kind of thing. So I totally get the point. I think that's an accurate analysis, but I like that. I quite like that.
Very good. Well, let's bring in Kristin and Anjum over, see what they think about these New Frontier books and or Peter David. Kristin, have you read any of Peter David's books?
I haven't, but I think I need to now. I think the discussion about representation and inclusivity almost makes me a little bit sad to see how far things have kind of gone back since then. Like, so much progress was being made in terms of inclusivity and respecting how others want to be seen and
represented.
Yeah, referred to. And now we see where we are, and it makes me a little bit sad to see that things have actually gone backwards. That's not how things are supposed to go.
Yeah.
So yeah.
I'm curious if Anjum's got anything to contribute, considering James kicked her out of the room while all of that was being said.
I'm so glad you noticed, Kelvin. I had to stand in the corridor just like I used to. But I'll come to that later. I do have something to say. I mean, it's more about James than the books, because he's such an expert. And I've always said that he should be running courses for our university about this. Would make an incredible unit to be taught, undergraduate and postgraduate, PhD, and even as like master classes. It would be amazing. I think there'd be people lining up to do that, but James doesn't want to know, and I just thought I'd put it out there because it's amazing. His knowledge is superb.
Yeah,
absolutely.
It's superb.
Yes.
And it should be shared, James. It was a real joy to hear that. Thank you.
Brilliant.
I know, but it's sort of like business and pleasure, isn't it?
Yeah, you do. Yeah, I understand.
And we mix that far too often.
Yeah,
anyway,
we already, our
our
jobs are seem like pleasure to everybody, but they're quite hard.
But we never have time to go to wine bars.
Lies.
Priorities.
Lies.
Hey, James, I wanted to ask, like, I read Imzadi over and over again. Like, I just can't get enough of it. Like, every 2 years, I'll just pick it up and read it. How many times have you read the New Frontier novels?
Oh, my goodness me. Well, over the past 25 years, I'd say those first 6, probably about 10 times.
Interesting.
And I've even got them, I've got the physical copies. The first ever one I got, I think, was free with Star Trek Monthly magazine, or whatever it was called back then in the days. And that's what I don't think I would have picked up and bought a Star Trek novel if I hadn't got it free. And when I got it, I read it, and I just was, from the minute I started reading that, I thought, my goodness me, this is spectacular. I love this. But yeah, I've got them on Kindle, so I've read them when we've been on our holidays in Sitges. I've read them all over the place. I absolutely love them. So I've read them. I've read Imzadi so many times, my copy's falling to pieces. So I had to get that on Kindle as well. I think that is I'd put that at one of the very best Star Trek books, if not one of the best sci-fi novels that you can think of.
Yes, and RetroDoc in the comments says, if you like Riker and Troy, the Imzadi novel is a must. We absolutely agree with you. And if you like Q, his book Q Squared is fantastic. And I also agree. Yeah. James, thank you so much for bringing this world of New Frontier. I'm very excited to read. Maybe next time when I'm visiting, you might be missing some books.
Yes. Can I say as well, just the second before I came on, our doorbell went. And it was the delivery man delivering the brand new Star Trek Strange New Worlds novels by David Mack. And inside it says, for Margaret and Peter. And I think that's Margaret Clark and Peter David, two of our literary Star Trek heroes that we've lost in the past few months or so. That was almost a message from somewhere coming through the door just before we did that. So I look forward to when Anjum's on. I should be in the back reading this. I'll really don't you worry. I'll be brilliant.
Well, thanks, James. I think before that, I think it's time for a little break, and certainly for me to sort out my lighting arrangement. So we'll be back soon.
Thanks, everyone.
Calling all audiophiles and Trekkies. Prepare to boldly go where no podcast listener has gone before with the diverse soundscapes of BQN. We're not just a network, we're a universe of exploration, entertainment, and deep dives into the topics you love. Here's your star map to the sonic adventures awaiting you. Charting the Star Trek cosmos, we have all good things. Embark on a comprehensive journey through the entire Star Trek universe with insightful crew of Amy, Christos, Kelvin, and Kristin. From classic to current, they cover it all. Galaxy class, Engage. Stephen and Stefan pilots this deep space mission, meticulously covering all aspects of Star Trek: The Next Generation. Infinite diversity. Stay current with the newest Star Trek frontiers alongside Chrissy and Thad. Union Federation. Whether your allegiances lies with Starfleet or the Planetary Union, Kyle, Kevin, Amy, and Haley offer a unified front discussing both current Star Trek and the truly Trek at heart, the Orville. Crack open that book with Peter and the Trek Book Club podcast. Delve into the rich tapestry of Star Trek's Beta Canon. What's the T-Bab? Christos spills the latest Trek news and fandom insights with an essential LGBTQIA+ perspective, complete with engaging guest interviews. Our visual voyages that you can find on YouTube, as well as a podcast, our Trexperts quiz. Think you're a Starfleet Academy graduate? Test your knowledge with Davey and MC's challenging Star Trek quiz show. And the Viewscreen. Tune in live on Sundays for your dose of Trek-inspired talk show. Kelvin and Amy host new 8-week seasons each spring and fall. Beyond the final frontier, we have Bargain Bin Gamer. Davey and Mitch, your self-proclaimed gamer guides, lead you to digital treasures, unearthing and reviewing the most affordable video game gems. Cinema Z. Grab your metaphorical popcorn for Mark and Matt's cinematic deep dives, unearthing overlooked films that demand your attention. History with the Zalogis. In order to never repeat it, tune in as Chrissy and Jason deliver bite-sized snippets of historical events from around the globe. And transformational journeys. Lex Rosa explores what it means to embrace authenticity in the face of societal expectations. To unlock deeper levels of engagement, try our patron perks. The Hive Mind is where you can join our random script readings, live reaction shows, and roundtable discussions. And check out our back catalog of It's Green, a verdant cornucopia of topics offering diverse and engaging conversations, and Amy's Math Moments. Discover the subtle and not so subtle mathematical wonders woven into the fabric of Star Trek. You can stay connected to our ever-expanding galaxy of content by following at BQN Podcasts on Instagram, Bluesky, YouTube, and Discord. We appreciate you choosing BQN to fill your auditory needs. Thank you for listening. Assimilate the audio.
Okay, we are back, and hopefully
there you are.
I was beginning to look a lot like Armus or the Shellyak in the last book. So I was just a silhouette. So I'm now facing a very bright light bulb. So hopefully I am a little bit better. Okay, so our final guest for today's episode, continuing our creative writing series, is a very good colleague of James at Manchester Metropolitan University. Let's welcome back onto the screen Anjum Malik. Hi, Anjum.
Hi. I feel like I'm at the bottom of the...
There we go.
Thank you.
Very good. Some assist.
Well done, James. So when we were thinking about the kind of variety for what do we want to discuss for Creative Writing Week, I thought, well, Anjum would be the perfect guest on the show because your writing range and experience is so vast, from when it comes to your poetry, your written words, and your screenplay as well, your script writing. So, but really, what I was very keen to hear from you, Anjum, was just your experience of Star Trek and what you remember, because I remember not too long ago, you actually just casually mentioning in conversation after us knowing each other for years, that you were such a big Trekkie yourself when the original series was being rerun back in the 70s. So I believe you've gone down memory lane a little bit and you've got a nice little story for us.
I have indeed. Thank you so much for inviting me. And Kelvin, you always look fantastic. Whether you're half lit,
even with the lights on.
I want to say thank you to the Viewscreen and all of you to invite me. It's a real pleasure to be here and to share this. It's been such a joy to go back to the days when I was a little girl at school watching on TV. So I'm just going to go through some of my notes, which are on my phone. I'm definitely not checking out dick pics. If I was, I would share them all with you. So yeah. Thank you, James. I love having James as my assistant. He's always helping me out at work as well. We love working together. So yeah, it's been a real pleasure, and it's true. So what I'm going to do is just sort of go back in time a little bit, share with you who I am and where I've come from, and how Star Trek has really appealed to me from being a young girl to now even. So yeah, I mean, when I think back to my childhood, really one of my favorite TV programs was Star Trek. It shines in my memory, you know, like a beacon. And the three of them, Captain Kirk, this photo is the trinity of Captain Kirk, Uhura, and Spock. You know, they were like my heroes when I, you know, imagine looking up to them as a young woman, young girl. And this was back in the 70s, really. It was a rerun of the series in England. And at the time, we were living as a family in Bradford in Yorkshire. We had just moved to England. And there was only 2 channels available at the time. Mm-hmm. It was BBC One or BBC Two. There were no such things as iPlayer, streamers, not even a remote control. You had to get up and go and press, you know. So for some of you, you weren't probably even a twinkle in anybody's eye. But I was around all that time ago. And you know what? I never missed an episode. And I think I sat like I am here in front of the TV on the carpet and watched. Mm-hmm. So it was a real window to another world. It was bright, adventurous, and full of possibility. And if I'm honest, now that when I look back, it was a world I had known before arriving in England as a child, growing up 2 other countries, which was Saudi Arabia and Pakistan, which I'm going to go into for you now. So I was born in Dhahran in Saudi Arabia by the Persian Gulf. In Saudi Arabia. I think that's the wrong picture, actually.
Oh, is it?
Yeah, it's the black and white one with the by the sea. It's a there we are. And so there's the Persian Gulf, and we were always on the beach there. That's my absolutely favorite uncle Zafar, who was also there working in Saudi Arabia. Both of my parents were from Pakistan, but my father was working for the American company Aramco in Saudi Arabia. And, you know, our community was delightfully, wonderfully international. People were working there from all across the world. And I grew up speaking American English, Arabic, and Urdu. Those were my first languages. And it was, you know, so I have a real connection with the US through being around Americans as a young girl. And yeah, so after that, we moved to Pakistan very briefly for about 4 years. And again, we lived in a place which was between Rawalpindi and Islamabad. Islamabad is the capital of Pakistan. And Rawalpindi has always been historically the capital of all the conquerors who've traveled through Pakistan. Pakistan is the northern part of the subcontinent of India. And so when they've conquered us, those areas they've traveled through, and Rawalpindi has always been the fort where all the armies have gathered. And even now, sadly, you know, some of those people are still, Rawalpindi is very much, but it's an amazing old city. But we lived in between the two in a little place, well, in quite a big place called Satellite Town. And it was all international people living there. So it was amazing. But when we moved to England in the 70s, it was sadly not international at all. And a complete shock, monocultural. And I suddenly found myself at school receiving serious racism, which was from my head teacher of all the people. He would have me in detention in his office. He would throw me out of classrooms into the corridors. He would call my parents in, who were really confused because I was a great girl at home, calling me disruptive, a troublemaker. The truth was, his favorite saying was, go back to where you come from. Stop wasting my time.
Wow.
And the reason why I got into trouble was that I was very fluent in English. I spoke better English than him and all the other languages I'd come armed with. And I had been brought up to speak for myself by my parents. And I would say, you cannot say that. And I will go when I want, where I want. Don't you tell me what to do. So you can imagine how Star Trek must have felt to me when I suddenly found this program on TV back then, facing what I was as a child. And, you know, you might say, where were your parents? Well, as far as I know, majority of South Asian kids did not tell our parents what was going on because we knew what our parents had gone through, traveling around the world, trying to secure us the best futures they could. We were not going to tell them what was really going on with us. We wanted to deal with them. But, you know, Star Trek was like a little savior in my world then, and it was amazing. And now when I look back, I realize all the things which appealed to me in Star Trek as well. Actually, you can move to the next picture, which you had before, which was me. That was me in Bradford, and those are my brothers. And we were trying to work out whose birthday it was. We can't remember, because none of us have our birthdays together. But I'm convinced that was my 16th birthday. But I could be completely wrong because I look a lot younger. But anyway, I thought I'd share that with me. Yeah, so, you know, I loved Star Trek because it was a show where people of every background worked together. They respected for what they brought to the mission without the word representation, even in anyone's psyche back then. I knew the show was right and perfect, and I loved it. You know, even the names like Captain Kirk, Spock, Uhura, Sulu, Scotty, Chekhov, Dr. McCoy. I mean, I love Dr. McCoy's accent. It looked like the world I knew I had been growing up in overseas. It was not really reflected in the British life or the screen at the time. And it wasn't really, you know, in Star Trek wasn't tokenism. It was, they were all equals in that series, in the world. And I loved that. Thank you for that slide. And, you know, this Star Trek. And then, yeah. And then after, you know, when I decided to come and do a little talk here, I discovered that Gene Roddenberry was, funnily enough, he had been a police officer before becoming a writer. And that struck another chord, and I understand even more my connection with Star Trek, because I, at 19, also joined the police. Which when I look back, I think was, you know, people have different relationship with the idea of police officers around the world. And we get very bad press. The police do. I mean, I call myself I'm not a police officer now, but I have a lot of time for police, especially in the UK. And, you know, when I joined, actually, by the way, my mum was absolutely horrified because he hated the police. I would not even tell them when they'd come looking for me and I was working for them where I was. And then when I'd get home and go, wait, did somebody call for me? I was expecting some people. And she'd go, I didn't tell them anything. They did come round. So she was hilarious. She never got over it. My dad was amazing. He listened, he reasoned. Really, they wanted me to go to university and study. But I couldn't bear to go to any more studying because I'd had such a tough time with our Mr. Sims. And really, Join the Police was one of the best things I did. Like Roddenberry, I think I wanted to see fairness in action, not just talk about it. And in a way, as an officer, nobody would mess with me. And no, I didn't go back and arrest my head teacher. I did go back looking for him, and he died by the time I got back to give him another piece of my mind. But, going back to Star Trek, it was amazing, really, because it amazes me that in the 1960s, in the midst of civil rights movement in the US, Roddenberry and his writers, Gene Coon, D.S. Fontana, were quietly slipping radical ideas into prime time television. Look at these guys. They were amazing. And, they disguised social commentary as science fiction, racism, war, gender equality, ethics. They were all explored safely because they happened on another planet. But they were beautifully explored. D.S. Fontana especially was one of the very few women writing on sci-fi television at the time. She gave Spock emotional depth and moral complexity, as I've come to discover researching for this talk. It makes so much sense to me because Spock was absolutely my favorite. I love the way his emotional world connected with me, and maybe with quite a few of you as well. But now I get it because there was a woman behind it. It makes a lot of sense. So, but I just, before, I know that I've talked about my head teacher, but really, even though my time in Bradford growing up was very difficult, it wasn't that everybody was like him. In fact, there were so many amazing people who helped me in the school and outside of school. Because I used to, when I got thrown out of the classrooms and got told to stand in detention, I didn't hang around. I cleared off. I skived. I left the school and I was gone down the road. And so, a lot of times I went to the library and studied there. So I wasn't, luckily I didn't end up on the streets doing things I shouldn't be doing. But there was a little shop around the corner from the bus stop. And I remember being really intrigued by it because it was a fashion, like a very posh fashion shop for women. And you know what? I remember going in there, and it was one of those shops. I don't know if you used to have them in the US, but we definitely still have them, but not as common, where you go in and you sit down on a sofa and they bring you drinks like tea, coffee, biscuits. And then you go, oh, I like that dress. And somebody puts it on and models it for you. And what was I doing in my uniform? I must have looked like a schoolgirl. They never said, get out of here. They sat me down, brought me tea and biscuits, and modeled the clothes for me. Oh. And I went there regularly. And I don't ever remember buying anything because I don't think I could have afforded it. But, so I had a lot of very kind people. The librarians were really kind. They never said, what the hell are you doing in here? Get out. They would give me these cubicles you had to pay for to sit in and write and work. And they would just let me go in and use them. And, when I thought about this, there was a lot of South Asian kids in the library, skiving always. And now I think maybe we were all facing the same thing. So the fashion shop was amazing. And I always think now, did they just do it for me? Or, they were amazing and it's not there anymore. I loved them playing along with me and treating a young Asian schoolgirl like royalty. That was like stepping into another universe of grace and possibility, which is the things I found in Star Wars. And their kindness, the women, they were all white, English, very proper English ladies. They made me feel safe, valued, liked. And maybe that's also why Star Trek resonated so much with me, because it showed people who look different, treating each other with respect and curiosity. It gave me satisfaction that the world can be okay and look like that one day. It was incredible. And so, but I would have never even dreamt at that time that that little girl watching the series, Sky being off to this fashion shop and library, would one day become a writer, herself. I certainly didn't think or even dreamt about being a writer. Didn't know there were writers behind drama and creators, and there were things like screenwriters and poets. And it was, didn't realize how powerful that kind of storytelling was. Star Trek didn't just entertain, it still does invite us to imagine better versions of ourselves. And I think I've carried that into my writing. My writing is, of course, multi-inclusive. I can write British, American, Pakistani, Indian, you name it, any character, because I've lived amongst them all, luckily. And I've also worked as a writer, not just on my own writing, but I go into communities and I get people to write. And they can be anybody. They can be, I've never worked with a lot of Star Trek fans, but they could be. One of the first ones, I've worked with, schools, white English, retired people, to women, to communities like South Asian communities. One of the first ones I did was with the Vietnamese boat people, not a while back when I first started out as a writer in the 90s. We had Vietnamese people arriving in boats on our shores. And I think at the time they were welcomed, from what I remember. And I went down to where they were arriving. I was invited down as a writer. And I worked with them, and we collected their stories. And there were other people who had settled in that city who turned up with their stories on pieces of paper. So, I have carried that of not only telling people stories, but getting them to tell their own stories as well. And what I love about Star Trek writing is that it tackled big issues: race, war, gender, ethics, through metaphor. It asks moral questions at its core. What kind of people do we want to be? That's what good drama does. It doesn't lecture, it invites reflection, connection. That's the ethos I bring to my own writing, exploring difference, connection, and moral complexity. So, in closing, what I'd like to say is that when I look back now, I realize that little girl watching a black and white TV in the 70s in England was learning more than stories about space. She was learning that the future could belong to everyone. And as Spock would say, live long and prosper. It isn't just a catchphrase, it's a wish for a generous, open-hearted world. You all.
Absolutely. Oh,
Anjum, that's beautiful. we get these writers on who just come up with these words that you and I, Amy, take for granted and say every day, and bring a whole new spin to it. So taking us down memory lane for you there, Anjum.
Oh, it's my pleasure.
I think it's, not to get too political, but to point out, when you were talking about the stories of immigration, about how people were welcomed here in the UK, who were through adversity or wanting to have a different life or a better life, and it's just not the case anymore politically.
Well, I would beg to differ, Kelvin, because it is the case still.
Yeah,
those not being heard about. We don't hear about them. I went to do a reading. I have a poem which is part of a 9.5-mile walk in Yorkshire. And we worked on it for, it started, this is a huge project. And I worked with communities there, and those poems produced, and then mine, are part of these, this walk you can do with poems along the way. And when we turned up, and I went to help sort of launch this walk, there were British flags in this town in Yorkshire, and they said they had appeared overnight. The people were really apologetic because I turned up there, and they said nobody in the town had put them up. People are being paid by Reform to go and put them up, and they just appeared overnight, and they were really upset because they were saying they feel like they've been lumped together with all these crazy people, but there's loads of them who are not part of it. And luckily have worked with them as a writer. And so you have to remember that it's not the case. And we have to remember there are lots of people like you and like everyone else there. It's the news people, because they make so much money out of it, are doing, and we have to remember that always.
Yeah, and that's the narrative, that's the belief, that's the counter argument that we need to bolster and give more visibility to remind people that it's the minority, not the majority, that feel that way.
Yeah.
My story of my head teacher against all the other people. I mean, I had amazing teachers. I told you, Kelvin, I was a big into art. I was never going to be a writer. I was going to be a visual artist. And so the other place I hid in was the art room. My teacher, who hilariously was called Mr. Green, would find me hiding, like painting or doing printmaking in the art room, because I'd run away from the classroom where the head teacher was. And give me a little corner where nobody could see me if they came in, because the head teacher would go on a rampage looking for me around the school. And he never found me because I had such brilliant teachers hiding me in their classrooms.
Oh, Anjum, tell Amy the other place you used to hide where the teacher never used to look for you.
Oh, well, I remember once he came, I heard him like roaring down the corridor. And I was like, oh my God, where can I hide? And the boys' toilet was across the corridor, and I dived in there. And that became my regular hiding place. The boys got used to me. They'd go, oh, Mr. Sims again, is he after you? They'd be really nice. And we'd giggle because he'd never think of looking for me.
No, that is a great hiding spot.
Brilliant. Okay, well, let's bring in James and Kristin as well to see if they've got anything to reflect on your story. I mean, it was certainly, as people who we know you, Anjum, to hear those things of your past, it's not only enlightening and entertaining, we just warm to you even more that we know this deep level of insight. So what were your favorite parts there, Kristin?
I think for me, it's just always interesting whenever somebody talks about their love of Trek and love of this franchise, is how it, for so many of us, it gave us a sense of belonging when we didn't find that belonging anywhere else. And that just seems to be a very common thread, because I know that was why I fell in love with this franchise as well. So to hear that very much represented in your beautiful telling of your experiences, it's just, it brings comfort to me to know that we all have found family through this show about traveling through space of all places, and how, you know, it shows us that in this universe we do have a place and we are here for a reason. So it was just absolutely lovely recounting of your autobiography.
Thank you so much, Kristin.
What about you, James?
I think it's that sense that Anjum gave very clear, which is a very familiar story to me, that sense of let's stop talking about this and actually do something, a sense of action. And I love the way that you kind of painted the picture of that in comparison to the Star Trek characters, but also the behind the scenes people as well. That's a very familiar story with Anjum in all kinds of different settings, and it gets stuff done. It makes a change. It makes people's lives better. It challenges the status quo to think, actually, why are we doing the, you know, we can't see that this is restricting things or closing down possibilities. And I don't want to spend all day sitting in a talking shop going on about this. Get stuff done, get stuff done. So she's the Captain Kirk. I'm often the Mr. Spock standing behind going,
all right.
Okay. Oh, I'll be a Uhura then. I'll be her. I've got to communicate to the rest of the ship. What's she doing now? I'm going to tell her, all right, we're going to do this. Bear with us. Yeah.
Brilliant. Well, thank you again, Anjum, for sharing your story. It's just so surprising to me, and thrilled to hear that Star Trek resonated with you so early on in your life, and kind of brought you into our lives, I guess. So whilst we've got everyone on screen, I think it might be a lovely little time for us to do a bit of a roundup of where people out there in the community can find you on social media if they're not already connected. So, James, where can you be found online on the socials?
Oh, I mean, I don't really want to be found, to be quite honest. I wouldn't go hide in the toilets. No, you can find, if you want to find me in relation to serious academic matters and literary and creative writing business, LinkedIn is probably the best place for that kind of a thing. If you want to see pictures of me in Star Trek uniforms and where I've been around the planet with these wonderful people with different badges on, and probably on LinkedIn, not LinkedIn, what's it called? Instagram at JBD1TQ.
Thank you very much. I think that's the first time anyone's ever said LinkedIn.
No, because you've had scientific people before who've directed us there. I've followed them and I see their LinkedIn information.
I stand corrected.
Very educational.
And Anjum, where can people find you online?
I think James forgot to tell you that there's a whole line of wine bars along Oxford Road where he can also be found.
I thought he didn't have time for wine bars.
Thank you. Retcon, Anjum.
I'm on the social media. Anjum Malik. I don't know my handles, but I think Instagram is Anjum M. And on Facebook is just Anjum Malik.
Brilliant. Well, thank you both for joining us today. It's been great to have you, and I'll see you in a moment because you're just next door.
Yeah,
we'll see you next door.
Thank you.
And Kristin, how about yourself?
I too am not really necessarily needing to be found online. I love that James put that out there. But if you want, hey, boo. Oh my God, did you guys use the transporter?
Yes.
Yes.
I think we call this building your part.
Sorry?
I think we call it building your part.
There you go.
Sorry to interrupt.
My Instagram handle's right there at KStrats. And then, of course, I am on Reddit at user Garrick's Fan Club. I don't really do Facebook. I don't do TikTok, Snapchat, or LinkedIn. So.
The wine bars of Canada.
Yes. And Kristin, you're going to have a special role next week. So looking forward to seeing you.
I am. I've got some big shoes to fill next week as I will be stepping in to co-host with Amy, who will be off celebrating with her beautiful sister, Wendy.
Yes.
I can't say I'm not completely jealous that I'm not going to be hanging out with the two of you because that's a beautiful place to be, is in both of yours presence. So
maybe we should have a glass of wine with us, Kristin. What's the worst that can happen? Let's go.
One glass quickly turns into one bottle, and then chaos ensues.
Brilliant. Well, we look forward to that, and I will see you next week. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
And Amy, where can people find you?
Well, you can find me. Of course, we have our Facebook group, the BQN Collective. I love to see you there. We also have a wonderful Discord server, and those are my favorite place. But you can follow at BQN Podcasts on Instagram and YouTube. And yeah, that's where you can find me. Kelvin, how about yourself? Where can people find you?
I can be found on most of the socials at Kelvin's Timeline, or in the BQN Collective Facebook group is where I can see everyone posting all of the little memes, commenting on people's posts. And yeah, that's my favorite place there.
All right. So what is coming up next week, Kelvin?
Brilliant. Well, next week we have, as I just find the picture to bring up, it is our Mind and Body Week. So we have returning two very special friends of ours. We have Lex Rosa to give us an update on what's going on with the Transformational Journeys podcast. And Ben Picos is back with us. And Ben is going to be talking about sports in Star Trek, as well as giving us a rundown, pun intended, of his triathlon career, which he is incredible at. So we look forward to hearing all about the mind and the body next week.
Amazing. I am sorry to be missing that. We'll be away. Kristin is stepping in to co-host, and we will have Christos coming on to do the news, since it's sort of up his alley with What's the Tea Bev. So
brilliant. Is that confirmed? I think you've just thrown him under the bus and given him a job for next week. So hopefully you'll agree to do that. Brilliant. Okay. Well, as a special reminder to our UK viewers, we are still on Greenwich Mean Time now. So we'll be on at 4 o'clock still for the next couple of weeks until the time change in America, when we will return to 5 o'clock for our last couple of episodes.
And massive thanks always to Kristin doing the news every week, and our producer behind the scenes, David. And I loved getting to see him this week. And in a couple hours, gonna go hang out. And of course, our marketing director, Kit Azima. Thank you so much for helping us produce this show.
And we would love to hear what you thought of today's show. And there are many ways you can do that. You can join our Facebook group, the BQN Collective, or you can join our Discord server. So you can follow our show on Bluesky, Instagram, continue the discussion there. And all of the links and invite codes are in the show notes.
A huge thank you to our Patreon members for your ongoing support of our network and this show. We don't show commercials, something that we really firmly believe in. So if you could donate, patreon.com/BQN, you can support financially the network and this show.
Now, if becoming Patreon member isn't your thing, then please remember that you can still show some support for the show and the network by just sharing our posts on social media, adding comments to our content, talking about the view screen with your friends so that they can come and enjoy us too.
Yes. So thank you so much for watching and for listening, rewatching, catching up with us. We absolutely love it.
But that's all we've got time for today. So we will be back same time next week. But for now, it's time to end transmission. Thank you very much.